Welcome to another Chalk or Not segment. This week, we're talking about UFC Vegas 102, where I believe we have 11 or 10 of our 12 scheduled bouts considered to be chalk. Again, my definition is anything wider than minus 185, and we have plenty of those for this weekend. And I know a lot of people are going to be looking to parlay these spots. Let's see if we can avoid the landmines and hopefully cash some tickets, whether you guys want to play the chalk straight or look to parlay them with somewhere else. This is your guide for those chalky spots, whether we should play them or not. So without further ado, let's get right into this bad boy. The first fight up will be Jacqueline Cavalcanti coming in at minus 730 as she goes up against Julia Avila, the returning Julia Avila, who was a somewhat of a bright prospect and rising contender before she ended up coming up short against the likes of Sijara Eubanks and Misha Tate. Avila is a very strong wrestler, BJJ black belt, and pretty much bullies a lot of her opponents to the ground and looks to damage them from that top position, often finding finishes. Cavalcanti is more of a striker, and she'll be looking to keep Avila upright so she can utilize that advantage and really batter her and beat her to the punch. The issue that I have here is that Cavalcanti is not worth minus 730, considering some of the close fights that we've seen her in up to this point. Even against somebody like Nora Kernol, and say what you want about that being a controversial split decision, it was still a fight close enough that one of the judges thought Kernol won that fight. Now you're going to insert Avila, who is a stronger grappler than Kernol, and seeing the success that Kernol had in the first round against Cavalcanti, there's no way that I can justify saying that Cavalcanti is chalkworthy in this spot. Hence why she will go into the not chalkworthy category for this segment. Next up, Walter Walker coming in at minus 235, going up against Dontel Mays. Now, this is a spot where I feel pretty damn good about Walker, as I think his grapple-heavy approach and his grinding is more than enough to keep Dontel Mays in defensive positions, and Mays is usually not much of a finishing threat either. I think Walker is a guy that will dictate and command the pace of this fight, and I think Mays will more than likely succumb to that, allowing Walker to push him against the cage or drag him to the ground and keep him on his back. I'm gonna lean with Walker here, and I do believe he is chalkworthy in this fight. Next up, Gabriel Bonfim coming in at minus 210, going against the returning Chaos Williams. Now, this should be a great matchup between two guys that usually like to throw down. Bonfim has more submissions on his record, but a lot of that has to do with his opponents shooting desperation takedowns or him hurting them first with strikes and then following up with submissions. Bonfim is a solid striker, and I think last time around was a great learning experience for him to go 15 minutes against a fighter like Angelusa so that he can still showcase that he can be effective over 15 minutes and not gas out like he did against Nicholas Dalby. I think we'll see a mature performance from Bonfim here, but as long as this fight stays in the striking realm, that gives Williams opportunities to really make this competitive. Obviously, Williams has knockout power and is a threat in that realm, and I'm a little bit skeptical about Bonfim's ability to deal with that type of striking, and I think Williams has good enough grappling defense that he should be able to keep this fight upright. I'm picking Bonfim to win this matchup, but I feel a little bit queasy with it and would be sweating it out should I parlay him in this spot. Hence why I'm going to say that he is not chalkworthy in this fight. Next up, Rafael Estevam coming in at minus 450, going up against Jesus Aguilar. Now, Estevam is a very solid grappler, undefeated, but unfortunately has not been that active inside the cage as of late. He's very good in terms of putting opponents into bad positions, snatching their back, and eventually sinking in rear naked chokes, or at least controlling long enough for him to get his hand raised on the scorecards. I think he's a very talented fighter, and it would be nice to see him a little bit more active, and I think he has a good enough stylistic matchup here against Jesus Aguilar to go out there and actually get the win. I believe Estevam is chalkworthy in this spot, but you luckily have good hedging opportunities on the Aguilar side should you look to go that route. I do like Aguilar by submission in round 3 around that plus 3,800 line if I'm not mistaken, but regardless, I believe Estevam wins this matchup, and I think he is parlay worthy. Next up, we got Jose Delgado coming in at minus 425, going up against Connor Matthews, who comes in as the underdog in this matchup, looking to hand Delgado the first loss of his UFC career in Delgado's UFC debut. Now, Delgado is a very talented striker that does a great job in terms of utilizing his footwork, mobility, and combination striking to touch up his opponents from distance, and that allows him to either set up knockouts or snatch up their necks or submissions and force them to tap. I think he is the far superior fighter here to Matthews, who normally relies on his physicality and his power and his ability to punch guys into submissions, but I think that Delgado will be far superior here, utilizing a better technical approach, utilizing his footwork, and even off of his back foot, I think he should be able to touch up Matthews from distance. I'm not entirely certain on the method of victory here for Delgado, but I feel quite confident that he can come through as a big favorite, hence why I believe he is chalkworthy. Next up, Rodolfo Vieira coming in at minus 265, going up against fellow grappler Andre Petroski. Now, this is a very interesting matchup. Although you have the credentialed side of Vieira as a chalky favorite, the guys are somewhat similar fighters in the fact that they want to get fights to the ground so they can establish their BJJ black belt. Obviously, Vieira, like I said, way more decorated than Petroski, but Petroski is a tough guy to put away, and both guys usually suffer from bits of cardio issues. But we've seen Petroski go into deep waters and still manage to get his hand raised by either getting a late finish or still going to the scorecards and getting his hand raised. He's very good with his top control, and I think he could cause Vieira some issues here, stalling him out from that top position with the wrestling advantage that he has here, or even if he decides to throw with his hands, he has much more power than Vieira brings to the table. Vieira could possibly snatch up a submission of his own, but at minus 265, I believe this is a fight that will play out closer than the odds indicate. Thus, I'm going to have to categorize Rodolfo Vieira as not chalkworthy in this spot. All right, next up, Ismail Bonfim coming in at minus 210, going up against Nazim Sadikov, who comes in as the underdog, looking to halt Bonfim from getting onto a winning streak. Now, Bonfim was able to box up and pretty much dominate Vince Pichel last time around, and this is a completely different matchup for him, especially considering that Sadikov is not a 40-year-old fighter. But Bonfim is still the more skilled striker in my opinion, and I think he is the more or the better grappler as well should this fight hit the mat. I'm looking for Bonfim to dictate the pace with his striking and with his pressure, and I think that will cause Sadikov a lot of problems unless Sadikov can uncork a big shot, which has saved him in fights like against Vyacheslav Borishev, or when he was able to land that nasty cut on Evan Elder, a fight he was behind in and would have lost should have gone to the scorecards. Unless he can find that big power shot, I think he'll be at the mercy of Bonfim's style, and that makes me believe that Bonfim, being the minute winner and the superior fighter overall, and having a huge strength of schedule advantage, I think he is more than chalkworthy in this spot. Next up, Edmen Shahbazyan coming in at minus 360, going up against Dylan Budka. Shahbazyan's trying to put Budka on a 3-fight losing streak and probably hand him a pink slip out of the UFC, and I think we'll see him showcase his top 10 style, especially within the first 5 to 6 minutes of his fights. We know that Shahbazyan has a little bit of a gas tank issue, and if Budka's chin somehow holds up through the first 6 to 7 minutes, we know what that usually means for Shahbazyan. He's going to start to slow down, and that will leave openings for Budka to grind him out, slow him down, and possibly put him into some compromising positions. I would rather take early finishing props on Shahbazyan than to eat that minus 360, especially knowing what we know about his gas tank. Thus, I'm going to have to categorize Shahbazyan as not chalkworthy. He is way more skillful, way better than Budka, but you can't trust somebody with that bad of a gas tank. So I'm going to have to go not chalkworthy on the Edmen Shahbazyan side. All right, next up, Yusuf Zalal coming in at minus 500, going up against Calvin Kattar. This seems to be a trend, as we'll see in the main event, of rising contenders looking to buck either former title challengers or guys that were on the cusp of title fights. And I believe Zalal is a new and improved fighter since rejoining the UFC, and I think we saw that fully on display last time around as he shut down the grappling game of Jack Shore, implemented his own grappling game, and eventually found a club and sub opportunity that he was able to snatch up in the second round. Zalal is a much different fighter than we originally saw from him in his first stint in the UFC, and I think a lot of that has to go with his aggressiveness, where he's been able to put pressure on his opponents and either find that club and sub or hop on their back and find the submission. I think Kattar, at this age, trying to return from those knee injuries. We've seen what he looks like in recent fights, especially against a grappler like Aljamain Sterling, and I believe Zalal can implement a similar grappling style, but also have a more effective striking style than we saw from Sterling, which could set up his grappling a little bit easier. Again, should this have been a few years ago, I would be hopping at the opportunity to take Kattar at a plus 400 underdog, but I think the time has passed him, and I think Zalal is on another level right now, hence why I believe he is a chalk-worthy spot at minus 500. Again, I'm not overly huge on Zalal as I've kind of faded him in the past, but he's starting to win me over, and considering the trajectory of both guys, I believe this is Zalal's night. All right, that brings us to the main event in the middleweight division, as we have Gregory Rodrigues coming in at minus 220 going up against Jared Cannonier. Similar to the fight that I just talked about, I believe this is a spot where the trajectory of Rodrigues is going to intercept Cannonier's, I guess Cannonier is already on the downslope. I think he's going to further him on that downslope. I think we'll see Rodrigues dictate the pace of this fight with his pace, with his pressure, and with his power striking approach. Cannonier might be able to uncork a big shot of his own that could cause Rodrigues some trouble, but should that Hail Mary shot not land from Cannonier, I think Rodrigues will be in the driver's seat for the majority of this fight. I only expect it to go about 2 or 3 rounds before Rodrigues lands that big shot and either gets Cannonier out of there with a club and sub or just fully puts him out cold, as we've seen Cannonier hurt badly in numerous fights recently. So I got to go Rodrigues, and I do think he is chalk-worthy in this spot. There you guys go. Full card, 10 out of 12 fights, I believe, chalk or not. Hopefully this is a helpful tool for you guys that like to build parlays. Let's see if we can cash some tickets this weekend. And I'll see you guys later on today for another segment for UFC Vegas 102. See you guys then.